right, it is 6 o'clock, so we will go ahead and call this meeting of the Greensburg City Council to order. Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Father?
Thank you. I was thinking as we was doing that Pledge of Allegiance, I don't hear that much anymore. It's probably good that we keep it going. Let's bow our heads in prayer. God our Father, we thank you first of all just for the rain we had last night. Thank you that it came at a very timely time when wheat needs it and corn is planted. Just ask you to continue to be generous with that, not only for us, but for all who suffer from drought. We ask you that you would bring peace in the world. Somehow change the people's hearts, that they will find a way to set aside the weapons of war. And that we can really learn to live together as brothers and sisters, as members of the one human family. And then we ask you to bless this community. May it continue to prosper. May it continue to be a community where peace, people find peace, where they do not have to live in fear. And bless the decision makers of this community so that they make decisions that will really reach for the good of all. Father, we pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
All right, roll call. Councilwoman Reeves is absent, but all other council members are present and we have a quorum, so we'll proceed with business. First up is approval of tonight's agenda. Does any council member have any questions on the agenda or any modifications to it?
I'd make a motion to approve the agenda as written. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as written. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda approved. Citizen comments. Hearing no citizen comments, we will move on to our consent agenda, which includes the minutes of our April 7th meeting and appropriations ordinance 1290.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda and appropriations 1290.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We do have a proclamation today as Arbor Day is approaching, and we will have our annual tree planting this Friday, correct, Stacy?
Yes, at noon at Sunset Park.
Okay. I'll plan on being there and encourage anyone who likes trees, which is hopefully all of us, to attend as well. But whereas in 1982, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide a habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products, and whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, now therefore I, Matt Christensen, Mayor of Greensburg, Kansas, do hereby proclaim April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day in the city of Greensburg, and I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. All right. That block proclamation taken care of, we'll move on to items of business. First two items are kind of related. First is a revision to our tourism board's bylaws, just as far as who is the makeup of that board.
These bylaws were first adopted in 2013, and we haven't had any revisions since then. But there are a couple things that have come up with the tourism board, both the composition and then also their meeting day and time. The board would like to change their meeting day to Wednesdays, the second Wednesdays of the month at 4 p.m. Instead of the second Mondays. That works better for the group that's currently on the board, and that is set in the bylaws. And then with the council member currently not serving on that board, the board would also like to request the addition of adding the mayor. That's not specified right now. The mayor has said he is willing to serve. I want to get the verbiage correct. He is willing to serve.
Willing, not quite eager, but willing.
He is willing to serve.
Hired.
So to add the mayor or city council members, that there would be a designee appointed to the board to serve. So bring those two revisions to the tourism bylaws for your consideration.
Council, discussion on the proposed changes to the bylaws.
Seems pretty simple. I make a motion to accept the changes to the tourism bylaws.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the proposed changes to the bylaws of our tourism board. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Changes approved. And that leads us into business item number 2, which is an appointment. The newly revised bylaws specify that a council member or the mayor serve on that board. So, hearing volunteers from council.
Thanks, Matt. Maybe they ought to take off the word council members and just leave mayor.
You already approved it, so we'll talk again in a couple of years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm willing to serve on that board if council so wants to appoint.
Oh, thank you.
And Karen.
Oh, that's true. We have another appointment.
Yes,
There's
and
two
Karen
appointments.
Couch has expressed interest to serve also to fulfill an unexpired term.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to make those 2 appointments to the tourism board. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, final item of business tonight is a discussion on jake braking or engine braking for trucks that are driving through town.
Recently, 2 council members inquired whether we had something regarding jake braking in our ordinance, and Chief Dennis and I took a look, and we do not. We do have a sign on the east side of town as you're coming in that says no engine braking allowed, but we do not actually have something in our code regulating that. In doing some research on my recent travels to different meetings and also track meets, I've taken pictures of like 6 or 8 towns in our area that all have them at their city limits, and they also have ordinances associated with it. So I think pretty easy if the council wanted to add into our noise regulation portion of our ordinance. It currently addresses open air exhaust, so I think a sentence just in addition to, I've seen a couple of examples of other cities that they just have another line in addition to that that says no engine braking, also known, more commonly known as jake braking. And so I think it's just a simple sentence addition that could be put in there. And then putting another sign up on the west edge of town. My assumption is we had them pre-tornado, and that one probably survived being where it is. It's not quite at the city limit, it's in a little bit. I would suggest, should the council want to move forward with this, moving that sign actually onto the city limit post. And then saying, that's pretty common in all the cities I've seen. It has their city limit sign, a speed limit sign, and a jake brake sign right on the 2 posts. And that's how I would suggest. Of course, we'll talk to KDOT and make sure it's all right, but I think there's precedent out there for sure for that to happen. I don't see this as something that our police department is necessarily going to sit at the city limits and write tickets for, but I think having an ordinance, should the need arise, they could. But I think just having the signs up would be hopefully a good preventative measure as people hit the city limits on either side.
In getting, sit at the intersection up here, the gas at the co-op, you'll see a few that use it coming up to the stoplight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that right there, then does that mean that we enforce it? You know,
It could be.
you know, and like other ordinances, pre-tornado, there used to be an ordinance that said no J-turns on Main Street. Like if you were headed south and
Mm-hmm.
you wanted to park on the east side of the street. And I believe there was signs at that time. I believe that
Yeah.
was pre-tornado.
They're used,
There used to be
Yeah.
signs.
But I mean, you know, if we're gonna put signs up, there has to be some sort of enforcement. Unlike
Right.
you, they can't sit at this edge of town and
Right.
hope somebody does it. No.
And I think that one would be difficult to enforce right at the city limit, but in the middle of town,
Yeah, different
pretty,
story.
yeah.
just like speeders, you're not gonna catch them all, but
No.
having a presence at least is hopefully enough of a deterrent to at least cut
And
it
if you do
down.
stop one, they can, if they wanna argue, they say, well, there is a sign at each end of town.
Yeah.
You've been warned.
And I don't know off the top of my head many towns that don't have those signs.
Yeah.
I'll
They're
talk
pretty
really wet.
common.
That, towns that do not have those signs.
Right.
Especially out in western Kansas,
Sure.
you know, where they gotta slow down for these towns. Most of them do have, that I can think of, do have those signs.
Some of them don't wanna use it in town because you're trying to make up time through town that they lost on the highway.
I'll admit, I was one of the people that brought it up to Stacy, and, I've thought about it on and off for years, probably, I just never got around to actually like saying something about it, but, it really came to my mind again when I was in at work at the hospital very early one morning, couldn't sleep, I was in at work at 5 o'clock, and my office is pretty centrally located, and just having there be a hospital right there, and how loud that noise is for patients that are, you know, in the hospital healing, trying to sleep at reasonable hours, and 4:45, 5 o'clock a.m., and you can just hear it all the way. I just thought, might be something to visit about.
And you know, early morning, like I said, is when I hear the most of it.
Yeah,
Especially if the wind is out of the north,
yeah.
you can really hear it.
I was at the pharmacy working in that lot. There were 3 semis in a row that had going into the stoplight. And it was like, they stopped and then they just pulled forward just a little bit and came again. Like, there was absolutely no need. It was like we just had too much noise.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want this to sit on the edge of town either, for tickets, but people are being obnoxious about it.
Right.
Yeah. You see them
I
when they're
think
doing
we're-
it in the act, then they get some
Dennis didn't have
justification.
any resistance to the idea.
No.
that he-
No.
So you'll just add a line.
Yeah, I'll prepare an
Because this number
ordinance.
5 that you have highlighted here, it says, except for a muffler.
Right.
Most of the ones that are doing it in town, if they had a muffler, you probably wouldn't hear it very well.
Yeah, like the newer ones.
Straight
they're
lights,
not
they
very loud.
rattle your windows when they do it.
Yeah, I would just add a line to that number 5, no engine braking.
Yeah.
Well, council, sounds like there's pretty wide consensus that we'd be open to modifying our ordinance to prohibit this. Is that correct?
So if we have a sign on one
Yep.
end of town, we need to have something
Yeah.
in the ordinance about it.
Either get an ordinance or take down that sign.
Exactly.
Right.
One of the two. And I'd say put it in the ordinance.
Okay, well, I think that's a consensus, Stacy, so
Yep.
future meeting, we'll have that modified ordinance for consideration.
Yep.
All right, any further discussion on the engine braking or other traffic ordinances? All right, hearing none, that is the end of our items of business tonight, so we'll move on to city staff reports. Stacy?
As previously mentioned, we'll have our annual Arbor Day tree planting at noon on Friday at Sunset Park, and I hope that you can join us for that. This week is the annual Kansas Municipal Utilities Conference in Wichita, and I will be attending that. Next week, Kennedy McKee will be here to perform our 2024 audit, so the first part of the week, probably 3 days, we will be mostly Christy involved with that. Answering questions and providing them the materials that they need to perform our audit. If you've been by the ball fields, you might notice last week that the posts that go around the west field were painted white. Sammy Jantz, the rec director, asked me if they could do that, and the JAG students helped, and in a day they knocked it out. The city, we did provide the paint, but they did the labor, and it looks really nice. I think they're gonna do, Sammy wants to do a little more painting on the dugouts to get rid of the blue stripe and maybe put a maverick orange stripe instead. So trying to spruce up out there, and I know that a council member has been out there doing a little welding too to help with the backstops, make them nicer too, so. And Chief Dennis has been working on some code enforcement, specifically junk vehicles on properties, sending out notice and visiting with some residents, and we've had quite a few that have been moved or tagged, tires aired up, things like that. So working on some of those things around town, and I'm working with Clayton on a couple of structures, nuisance structures, and how to move forward with the process of hopefully getting those remedied. So as we move into summer now, and we'll be looking at mowing and all of that too. So 'tis the season. I think that's all I've got.
Questions for Stacy? Hearing no questions for Stacy, do we have any governing body comments tonight?
Do we have an ordinance or a policy on how many times the whistleblowers in town
No,
talk about noise? The whistle in and of itself is noisy, but the 10 minutes of listening to dogs bark after it blows is probably worse. So, if it's not an ordinance or a policy, is there anything that will stop us from reducing that to once a week or even just once a day?
if that is something that the governing body would like to see changed, we are happy to make that change.
I know I don't know how long after the tornado, but we did not blow them for any reason, for obvious reasons, but there were a few community members who missed it and requested that we start doing it again. But honestly, in this day and age, you don't really need a whistle to tell you that it's noon or 6 o'clock.
And I've had a few people complain. What's the deal with the whistle? It's 3 or 4 times.
It's 3. Noon, 1-6-ish.
I'd love to see it reduced to 1 day a week, but.
1 day of the week.
1 day a week, 1 time a day.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's just the centrally located one, that's the only one.
It's just this one that blows for the time.
Yeah,
It's not the rest. All of them blow when it's for storm. Yeah.
or for tests.
Or the test, yeah.
Or perhaps it blows at 6 o'clock the first and third Mondays of every month.
Oh,
My meeting.
there you
So
go.
people to tune in and get engaged in local government.
I
Get
don't
up here.
know how detailed
comment.
the scheduling system is on the siren to be able to be that specific. But obviously it cannot do Sunday, so.
I would say, I think if I remember right, typically in the past, changes to how that whistle blows were typically an agenda item at a council meeting.
We had some citizens that wanted it to come back also.
Yeah, so I would not be opposed to maybe adding it to the agenda in an upcoming meeting and inviting citizens who care one way or the other to come and give their 2 cents, and then deciding then
We address it.
when and if we want to keep doing that. Does that sound fair?
Would you be interested in like posting on our Facebook page to try to gather some input? Do you like it, yes or no?
I would say maybe less direct gathering of opinions through Facebook, more of an invitation to
Come to the council
come to the
meeting,
council meeting and give your 2 cents.
either way.
Because the people who care enough to attend the meeting are the ones who really care one way or the other.
Okay.
Does that sound fair?
Yeah, from behind the keyboard and come visit with us.
Okay.
I visited with Christie on Friday about we need to educate some of our citizens about our ordinances, about, what was it, Christie, special purpose vehicles
Yes.
on the streets, such such as the golf carts and things like that, they need to be tagged to the city. You have to have a valid driver's license. You can't be in junior high and be ripping around town on them. So if we could somehow educate the public again.
Mhm.
That might be something just to try and do on an annual basis, just because, I mean, it's,
I don't disagree with that this
It's-
time of year, because this is when they come out.
yeah, March, April.
Yeah, when it warms up is when everybody starts, I was telling her, I had a close call here last week one evening with a young man on a scooter. It was close to dark, and he went shooting across the intersection in front of me and never looked. And it was one of the stand-up electric scooters.
Yeah.
So
I'll visit with,
she went over the ordinance with me and we
Yeah.
tried to decide what,
I think in the past, kind of that annual education like you talked about, I think we've posted it both on the police department page and also the city page, just a reminder. And I'll visit with Dennis about it, and he'll also be out and might see some people that can have some conversations about it too.
Maybe even go so far as put a little blurb in the March and April utility bill insert. Not that a lot of people read those, but, I mean, as many avenues as possible for looking at outreach, try to do, or are we looking at doing away with those?
Oh, no,
Okay.
no.
Just not many people. Yeah,
It hasn't got sent out yet.
and you'd be amazed at the number
I'll
of
do it in the
people
morning.
that say, I'm not gonna do that, I'm not gonna go buy the $25 permit so I can run my golf cart up and down the street. Christie and I had that discussion. Really? Okay, then pay the ticket and then buy it,
Yeah,
you know?
at least,
Or especially when your young child is driving it and you're not even with them, and they're on the other side of town. So there's another, that's a double there.
if we're going the, effort of trying to educate and make sure it's known, then, people can't plead.
I'll be honest with
ignorance
you,
excuse.
I got laughed at the golf course for putting my sticker on my tag. What are you doing? So that I won't have to worry about it. I'll take mine home if I want to. They ain't gonna stop me. Okay.
Was there a reason there's a $25 permit?
Safety, so that they can be checked out that they have brake lights, right?
Well,
Yeah,
see, that all
And-
changed. That all changed, though.
Really, the issue, how this all came about initially was go-kart style and scooters and underage folks on the roads driving them, and some very near close calls of kids getting hit.
I thought it started out with the golf cart deal where we had to have brake lights, you had to have a slow moving
That came out,
ambulance,
yeah, that came out
rearview
of it.
mirror. And then all of a sudden, I think it was when, Kyler, yeah, and even Aaron was here. If you can use hand signals, and you got a slow-moving emblem and a city tag, you're good. So the rest of us went to all the expense to do all this other
Right.
stuff.
But I think the vehicles of more concern are the scooters and the,
Yes,
like pocket bike, dirt bikes, and go-karts
yeah.
that are low to the ground. But yes, we can do some education.
That's our only route. That doesn't mean they're gonna comply with it, right? But we tried.
Well, and if it's-
Or writing tickets.
if it's
That's
against
right.
physical safety too, I didn't think we should maybe consider just waiving the fee. That way people come in and get the tag, and they don't have the idea in their head that they're just trying to generate revenue.
I don't think it's so much about the registration part, it's more about the vehicles that are not permitted.
Sure, but if we
And the
remove
age of
the
the
barrier to
people.
getting stuff permitted,
Right.
in some people's mind, $25, I shouldn't have to pay this, well, then don't pay it, it's still
Right.
being taxed, make sure you're safe.
And to be fair, it's not like that revenue is even a drop in the bucket for the city's operations anyway.
The city of Wichita just allowed them to have go-karts on the side streets up there. Now you should probably start seeing them out on Kellogg somewhere. That's where all the
Oh,
flashing
geez.
lights will be.
It's a pretty hot topic.
Yeah.
on both the administrator and the city clerk website, or listservs, every year about this time.
Yeah.
What is your policy? Where do you get your tags? What do you do with this? How do you do this? And some people just flat outlaw them. Others have a system like we do to allow them, however, to make sure they have some safety equipment. And there's,
And anymore, it's not just golf carts and stuff like that. Everybody has a side-by-side, you know, a razor, something like
and
that.
some cities allow and some don't. It just totally depends on the community.
Yeah, yeah. So there's getting to be more and more of that type of traffic vehicles, whatever you want to call it.
Well, council, really can't make any changes tonight on that, but is it something that you guys want to maybe take a closer look at a future meeting? Just those ordinances and see if we want to change any of the verbiage or provisions?
I would just talk about educating the public, more or less.
Okay.
Rather than open up a can of worms trying to go back and rewrite a bunch of stuff.
Okay. Just thought I'd ask. That we can't do.
Well, it is
So that we
something.
can't do tonight.
Yeah, I mean, that's
It
a
kind of
start.
plays into what Wayne says. I don't think, get rid of it because we got administration fees, we gotta pay for the tags, but we could do a special like we do with the dogs that we get registered in town. Hey,
That's true.
register through this week.
Well,
You
For
get
$10.
it.
Not
Yeah.
only registration, but you're gonna register, you're gonna buy a registration from the city, and we're gonna inspect it to see if you
Yeah.
have your slow-moving emblem,
Mhm.
to see if you have whatever else you need, and at that time, have an education process. Here, get a piece of paper, here's what you gotta have.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
And you'll still have the ones that are reluctant to comply. Anyway.
Any further discussion on that item? Any other governing body comments? Well, hearing none, that brings us to the end of our agenda tonight, so we will adjourn the meeting. Thanks for your time, everybody.